When a person is depressed, a lot of times if you do get them to talk, you need to just allow them to talk. You might need to resist giving advice. If they ask for advice, you can do it, but don't feel like that's a way to comfort them. The reason that this is because sometimes what we consider to be helpful is really coming off as judgmental to a person who's in a deep depression. At this time, what's most important is to develop trust so that they know that you honestly care. You have to develop your ability to listen and listen deeply, sometimes beyond what's actually being said. And you have to be ready to be aggravating to them if you need to. If you're asking them every day, how are you really? And they keep telling you, I'm fine, I'm fine. Eventually you can kind of feel like you're being annoying by asking that question. But sometimes just asking that over and over again, maybe that fifth time, that sixth time, they will tell you, well, no, I'm really not okay, and this is what I'm dealing with. But there are things not to say, period, when somebody is in a deep depression. Now, I can vouch for most of these. First of all, don't say, just think happy thoughts. I don't understand what you have to be so sad about. Okay. You don't understand what they have to be so sad about, but that's completely cut off the communication. Because when I'm in a deep depression, I'm in no mood to argue with anybody. Okay, you don't get it, bye. You don't need to be around me. And telling somebody just to think happy thoughts is not helpful. When a person is in a deep depression, a hopeful thought is out of the question. Sorry, not sorry. When I'm in a deep depression, I'm incapable of a hopeful thought, hence being in a depression, okay? And somebody's giving me empty advice like just think happy thoughts. I'm incapable at that moment. And that tells me that this person has probably not dealt with depression themselves. Because they would understand that. They would know that when you're in a deep depression, you're in this dark bubble and hope exists just outside the bubble, but you can't see to even the walls of the bubble because you're smoked out by this depression. So don't do that. Don't say, just think happy thoughts. I don't get it. That just is not helpful. Another thing not to say is everything will be okay, I promise. Empty. Empty. I'm in the deepest depression. Everything will be okay, I promise. You promise. Who are you? Right? And if you don't even understand what's going through my head in this depression, then how can you promise me anything is empty? Everything will be okay. That's outside the depression bubble. That's bordering on the hope that I can't even see. Another thing, I cut out the sugar and I was cured. You should try it. Okay, that's you. Maybe that's advice and everything, but talking about what helped you is no help to me in this situation. Wait till I come out of this depression and then let's talk about practicalities. That's just not helpful at that time. The last thing you want to do is to cause a person to withdraw from you further when they're in a deep depression. And if you just say the wrong things, then they're going to shut down more. And it's going to be hopeless for you to come to them in the next few days talking about, I'm ready, I'm here if you want me to listen, because you've already shown me that no, you're not ready to listen. Another thing you should not say is,
snap out of it.
Right? Snap out of it. In general terms, a person who deals with depression probably has a history of bouts of depression, as I have. And you can't just snap out of it. That's frustrating to hear. Snap out of it. You're showing no patience and no caring. You're thinking that this is just the flip of a switch and I'm out of it. You don't have any understanding at all of depression if you're saying that to somebody. So please don't say that to somebody who's in depression. The other thing is, there are so many people out there who are worse than you. Really? Is that all you got? I gotta tell you, Storytime. So back when my ex-husband had been taken into prison, and it happened, we went to court and he didn't come home for 5 years or so. And so I was completely lost. I had depended on him for so much. Now I had half the household income overnight. So that meant I had to figure out where to move to that I could afford to rent. He would do everything. He'd do all the grocery shopping. He loved to be the clean in the house. You know, 'cause I was off somewhere else. I ain't that person keeping the house clean. And all of a sudden, that support was gone overnight. Well, in the midst of this mess, I had to deal with all of the lies he had told me. I had dealt with lie after lie after lie, okay? And lies about the situation that landed him in prison all came to light in that courtroom. Then I understood why he didn't want me to go to court with his behind. The bottom line was whether I went to court with him or not, his butt wasn't going to see the light of day for a while. Well, naturally, because I fought depression all my life, that threw me into another bout of depression. But through this bout of depression, I had no choice but to try to survive. I had to make decisions, life decisions, and I had to move on them quickly. Well, I had a friend that would kind of help me out, help me move, that kind of thing. This joker right here, he said to me one day something. I was so mad at him that I don't think I talked to him for months. Just get over it. You should be over it by now. And I was angry at hearing that. Just totally angry, because what it told me was that he didn't understand nothing about me. He had no clue about what I was dealing with, and it showed no patience and no understanding at all. I was shocked to hear that coming out of his mouth. So when you're in a deep depression or you're dealing with life challenges in that depression, you don't need anybody telling you to snap out of it. It's not going to work like that. If I could push a freaking button and never have to deal with depression again, I will push a button and do that. But that button doesn't exist. And you may as well not either, because I don't even want to see your face. Okay? It's just not a good thing. So, in all of these things that I told you not to do, at the core of all of them is communicating, whether you're coming from your heart or not, intentionally or not. It's communicating that I'm outside your bubble and I'm incapable of understanding what's happening in your bubble. And by virtue of my lack of that understanding, what that communicates to the person in depression is more hopelessness. So don't do that. What a person in that kind of depression needs is somebody that they can truly trust, somebody who's going to be patient with them, and somebody who's not going to be afraid to step into their world long enough to understand, what are you thinking? What's going on in your head? What feels hopeless to you right now? And be able to do that without sounding or being judgmental of the condition that person is in. Now, always remember, it's going to eventually come to a point where you may have to make a phone call. I'll give you another story time number 2. Toward the end of my marriage, I was working on a doctorate. 9/11 had happened. I'm sitting up watching 9/11 24 hours a day. No, I'm going into a deep depression, not washing my hair, not bathing, not taking care of myself. I was just in a deep depression. It felt like the walls were closing in on me. I go to the doctor and she prescribed me, I won't say what it was because I don't want to be, I'm just not going to put that out there, but she prescribed a particular antidepressant. And at the time I said, is this habit forming? Is this going to be addictive? Would it cause withdrawals? And she told me, don't worry about it, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. It's not addictive. So I start taking this antidepressant and I'm getting worse and worse and worse. And when I told my primary care physician that I was getting worse, what she did was she doubled the dose. Didn't titrate me little by little onto a double dose. Doubled the dose. Well, next thing I know, I'm thinking about taking myself out. All of a sudden, and it hit me one day as I was going into work, I'm going to call it take yourself out because, I can't say the S word, but you know what I'm talking about. And all of a sudden, I'm walking into work one day and something said, take yourself out. And I said, oh my goodness, what the heck is going on? And so I had enough sense for my own training. There were two people in the office. I didn't even get to my desk. I called those two people into my supervisor's office. It was my supervisor and one or two other people. And I told them, look, I'm not doing well. And if you see any signs that are worrisome to you, here is the name and number of my therapist. Now, these were people that I trusted. Here's the name and number of my therapist. And I explained to them, I'm signing a release with her, with your names on it, so that she can discuss my case with any one of y'all if necessary. But this is who you call if you see any weird behaviors out of me. I don't think I told them that I was having suicidal thoughts. Well, anyway, that happened. And then my next session, I did sign the release and gave her the names and numbers of the individuals. Cut forward a couple of weeks. I am so depressed, I'm not even going to work. I'm just keeping all of the blinds closed. I am not answering the phone. I just called in sick, and I just laid in the bed all day. And that went on for about a week or so. So one day, my phone rings, and it rings, and it rings, and it rings, and it rings until it gets on my nerves enough that I decided to answer that phone. It was my therapist. Now, my supervisor is all the way in another city at a meeting, and she called my therapist because I was isolated like that. When the therapist said, I want you in my office right away, so made an appointment for me to go the next day. And when I tell you guys that it took every ounce of energy I had to get up and bathe and brush my teeth and comb my hair. It took every ounce I had. I did all that. I made it out to the car. I got in the car. I drove to the place. And when I got in the parking lot of this place, I turned off the car. I opened the door. And it felt like my body was being weighed down by lead. I couldn't hardly get my leg out of the car. And I remember dragging myself through those doors. And I plopped down in her chair. And she said, I'm going to commit you. Now, people can commit you if you messed up bad enough, all right? And that commitment can be against your will. And I begged her. I said, no, because I had these visions of a white room, padded walls, and just one little twin bed in it. And me in that room, I'm already feeling hopeless. And I felt like if you put me in that, I'm just going to lose it completely, because it's like now I don't have any control over any of this. So I just talked her into, I said, look, just don't do that. No, don't commit me. And she said, okay, this is what I'm going to do, Linda. I'm going to send you over here. It was another building, kitty corner. And she said, I'm sending you over here for them to do an evaluation. And don't BS these people. Just be truthful about what you're going through. And if they say okay, then I will put you in a day program where you can go at home at night, but you spend 8 hours a day for, say, 5 or 6 weeks in our program. So that was good enough for me. And I did that. I was off work almost 2 months, and I did that little program and everything. But what I'm saying all of this to say is, the minute I saw that I was having thoughts of taking myself out, I knew something was wrong. So once she said day program, let's come back to that situation. Once she said day program, then I had to get in touch with the administration at my school. I was going to Capella online at the time, and I was in that PhD program for criminal justice, and I had to call them. I made a couple of phone calls, and I wound up with the dean of the program I was in, and I told him what was going on and how that lady had doubled my prescription. And the first thing he told me, and y'all got to know that this man was serious about this, because generally he probably shouldn't have been telling me this, but it was serious enough that he did it anyway. He said, the first thing you need to do is come back down off that medicine. You need to go into that medicine, go back down to the original dose. You got to do that right away. And I did that, and that helped me throughout my outpatient treatment. I'm not telling you this for any other reason but to relay my experience. And you should always work with your doctor. Never stop taking any kind of psychotropic drug they ever give you. Don't ever just choose on your own to stop taking that. Because some of these things you need to titrate off of while being titrated on something else, or whatever the deal is, whatever your condition is. You never just stop taking a psychotropic drug like that. You just don't do that. You're harming yourself if you do that. So if you have a concern that what you're taking is something that's not good for you, talk to the person that prescribed it to you, okay? And work with them in order to do whatever they recommend that you do. So you got to deal with your doctors on that. For me, it helped me when I went back down to the original dose. So did this program, got back on an even keel, and went on with my business. But it's not like that just took care of depression for me forever. It was sometime after that I recognized, you know what, Linda? All your life you've been in and out of this depression thing. Maybe you just have an issue with it. Maybe it's something you need to learn is a part of your life. It gets triggered from time to time. So for me, once I figured that out, then what I did was what I could do to make sure that my lifestyle would not be set up where it would trigger something like that. I had to re-examine certain relationships, cut certain people out of my life, and start dealing with the things that caused me to always put myself in a position that would trigger that depression. So I'm not saying I don't suffer from it anymore ever. I still have these things that come on me, but I know that once I get into that depression, certain things that I want to do, like isolate, don't want to talk to nobody. I don't want to even know anybody know that even on earth. I know that I have to make choices better than that when I'm in the depression. I know that I sit up and I feel so totally hopeless about everything. But what has helped me is once I'm in the depression, I don't ignore it. I acknowledge it. And I know to tell myself, Linda, you are in a depression. You're incapable of a hopeful thought right now. So when those thoughts come, don't waste your time on them. and I do what's necessary, go exercise or take my mind off it some other way. But I learned how to know what triggers it in my life and to understand what it's coming on me so that I'm not in a deep depression before I deal with it. So those are just some things that help me out. So the takeaway is, if you don't understand what that depressive thing is like when somebody's in the middle of it, then go ahead and educate yourself. I'm going to put some links below to some educational sources for you, some things you can download from some authoritative websites to help you so that you can understand how to deal with that, because it's hard when you have a family member or somebody in your household that's going through that depression and they're steadily isolating from you and getting more and more and more distant from you, and you don't know what to do. And sometimes just that desperation and not knowing what to do can drive you to say or do the wrong thing. I want you to understand that it's not hopeless, and maybe you are the only figure of hope that's around when somebody's in depression, because when we're in this deep depression, it's just no hope in the bubble. It's just no hope in the bubble. And we can't see ourselves out of that bubble, but sometimes we just so depressed, we don't want to see ourselves out of the bubble, and leave me the heck alone. But sometimes you have to kind of have enough relationship with somebody that you know, no, you're not going to go through this by yourself. You know, I care what's going on with you. And when you're ready to talk, I'm here. Just be willing to be that support for them if you need to. But also, if the situation gets so deep that they're just totally not functioning, then you may need to contact the doctor or take them to emergency, or make sure that you get in touch with a doctor, because there's nothing wrong with that. If you see somebody you love going through depression and they get so deep that they just can't function, sometimes you have to make that call. Always remember, your greatest power is realizing the truth of who you are, and know that truth. I'm Dr. Linda. Wait, be sure to hit that subscribe button below, hit the like button, and hey, share this with anybody that you think needs it. Also consider joining our membership, hit the join button below, and contact me for your complimentary breakthrough session.